She could have protected her money in different ways to protect her future and ways that she can be cared for if she had done those things before the sale of her home, because your home is and it's different from state to state. Law varies depending on where you live, but in Massachusetts, your home is protected as your primary place of residence from certain creditors, especially, medical providers, so that you won't become homeless if you have a serious illness. And that was not done because she didn't have support, protection, and expertise on her side. So her money that she received from the proceeds of the sale is not protected the same way that her home was protected before she sold it. And now she's accumulated a tremendous amount of medical bills, and she is probably going to have to drain all of her resources to pay those so that she can qualify for government assistance. And she never in her life has had to do that before. Welcome to Home After 50. I'm Julie Ford, and this is a show about reimagining what life can look like in this next chapter. Here we explore home, family, reinvention, and the evolving ways that women after 50 are shaping lives that are meaningful, grounded, and true. I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome back to Home After 50. Today's episode is a bit of a cautionary tale. It's a true story, and I'm sharing it with you because if you're an older adult, if you're a family member or a loved one or friend of an older adult, or you're a professional who works with older adults, particularly real estate agents, and I'll explain why I'm saying that, I would love for you to listen to this, and I hope that it's helpful for you in helping protect the interests of those people that you work with and care about, or yourself. So I'm going to share this story with you, and I will leave out many details to protect this person's privacy, but it's a perfect example of why all of us need support in our lives. And there are so many people who are out there managing very complex things on their own, which makes me very sad. But hopefully we can all try to be better neighbors, friends, family members, loved ones, professionals, and be on the lookout for ways in which we can help and support people, but be sure that we know what we're doing and stay within the scope of our expertise, our professional qualifications, certifications, and be sure to call in help when we're beyond the ability of our capacity or our knowledge about a situation. You will often hear me advise people, I feel like I'm a broken record, honestly, to have an attorney, especially an estate attorney, and especially for older adults, an elder law attorney, to make sure that your interests are protected. And to, be sure if you're combining households in a multi-generational home that you've talked through all of the possible ways your home should be set up. Or if you're selling a home or planning your estate, your will, or your medical care, healthcare proxy, or power of attorney. There's so many things that we've got to think about in life to protect ourselves and our loved ones. And this is a part of this story. So about 8 years ago, I met a woman, and she was looking for support with buying a home. And we worked together for several months. We found her a lovely 2-level townhome, and she bought it. And throughout that process, I got to know her a little bit. We didn't know each other that well, but we worked together for a few months, so we became friendly. I wouldn't say we were super close, but certainly we had a great relationship for buying her home. And I did become aware through that process that she had some health issues because they would pop up from time to time. She would have a difficult day or, a difficult episode with a health issue and would have to sort of pause the search. Even down to at the closing, she had a medical issue happen. But it all worked out. She bought the home. She moved into the home. She loved it, and it seemed to be going really well for her. And we stayed in touch over the years. Just, as people do. I think occasionally she would reach out to me for a recommendation, maybe for a contractor, or a friend of hers would need a real estate agent and she would recommend me. And I was always so grateful. And we had a warm, friendly relationship. Over the course of the past 8 years, since I originally helped her buy her home, my business has grown and my capacity and expertise has also grown. And I've served many older adults and families during that time. I became a certified senior advisor. I became an end of life doula. I've supported my aging mom in her aging and health journey. And, you all know she lives with us in our multi-generational home. So all that to say, when she reached out to me again last year, when her situation had become more complex, I was pretty well equipped to support her. So she called me last year, shared with me she'd had another much more serious health issue, and that she probably would need to be thinking about a new home soon because her home had 2 levels and she needed to be in a 1-level home. So we talked several times back and forth, but she was in medical care at the time and wasn't ready for me to come by and talk about the home. So we left it that when she was ready for me to come by and talk about the home, that I would come and we would make a plan. But I stressed to her, as I always do to all of my clients, that the first thing we would figure out together was where was she going to go? And I'd like to put a pin in this part of the conversation, or just like stress this part of the conversation and say, if you have an older adult in your life and you're talking about a transition, or if you're a professional and talking with an older adult about a transition, oftentimes when people are thinking about where they need to go next, they approach us, especially in real estate. Because we sell houses, right? People will reach out to me and start the conversation with, I need to sell my house. I'm actually experiencing this with another older gentleman right now. And it's true, he does need to sell his house, but I always slow things down a little bit and come back to, okay, but let's talk about where you're going and what your plan for the future is. Because sometimes people imagine that before they can move forward, they need to figure out selling the house so that then they will, access the equity in that home so that they will have the resources they need to move forward. But the truth is, there are many, many possible ways to figure out a move forward and access the resources to do that without first selling your home. Because if you're an older, aging person, or you're dealing with a complex medical situation, there is nothing more stressful or precarious than putting your home on the market, number one, while you're living there. And there's many ways we can plan to have you avoid living there during the sale. Sometimes you need to, but oftentimes you don't, and we can work together to make a plan. But also, putting your home on the market and not knowing where you're going is incredibly stressful. So I always bring the conversation back to, let's figure out what the future looks like, what you'd like the future to look like, what you need, make a plan for that, and then we can talk about selling the home. And it's all part of one big plan, but it's really important, especially if you're in real estate and someone approaches you about selling their home and you are aware that they haven't figured out where they're going, they may not have a lot of support in their life, or they just haven't tapped into that support yet. Sometimes people, haven't talked with their family or other people who could maybe provide some extra support. It's really important that you bring in all the support that's possible and slow that conversation down and focus on where the person's going to live. So back to my client. I was waiting for her to call me so we could sit down and make a plan. And instead of a call, I got a text a couple of months ago. And she reached out to me asking me if I knew a particular real estate agent who was a neighbor of hers. And I didn't. I had not heard of this person. And she said, well, this person lives in my community and she has someone who is willing to buy my home. And they can pay cash for it, and I won't even have to clear it out. And I've signed the offer. She told me how much she had signed the offer for, and I was alarmed about that because I knew how much her home was probably worth. And I was concerned, but at that point she had already accepted and signed the offer. So I did the thing I could do, which was strongly recommend that she reach out to a well-respected attorney. And this is an elder law attorney that I suggested she reach out to. I gave her the phone number for this person, and I let the elder law attorney know to expect to hear from her. I also gave her some other resources because the truth was she was still in medical care, but she didn't know where she was going to go next. And so she needed help with finding a home. So we talked about resources for all of those things because she was going to need extra support with that. And we can talk about that in another episode. That might be something to get into if people are interested. But I'm going to stay with the real estate story for now. So I left her with the resources she needed and hoped that despite the fact that I thought she was selling her home for much less than she could have gotten for it, that it was all going to be okay. It's not all okay. So this week, I got another call from her. And when I spoke with her, I learned that the home had closed, that she had never reached out to the attorney that I had recommended because she had been much too ill at the time to manage that on her own, which I didn't realize until we talked again. And unfortunately, she missed an enormous opportunity to protect her assets. So I have since spoken with an elder law attorney about this. We talked it through to see if there was any recourse for her. We are exploring a couple of things. So this is not, I'm not sharing this to dive too deeply into the details of this person's life, but here's the point of this story and what I want you to understand. She could have protected her money in different ways to protect her future and ways that she can be cared for if she had done those things before the sale of her home, because your home is and it's different from state to state. Law varies depending on where you live, but in Massachusetts, your home is protected as your primary place of residence from certain creditors, especially medical providers, so that you won't become homeless if you have a serious illness. And that was not done because she didn't have support, protection, and expertise on her side. Of course, now we cried a little bit about this, and she wishes she had called me, but she was in a very, very vulnerable position and was approached by someone who was a neighbor. And I honestly think that maybe that neighbor thought they knew what they were doing. I hate to think that people are being malicious. Of course, some people do have terrible motives. I hope that was not the case. But in any case, at best, this person was out of their scope of expertise and did not ensure that my former client, this woman who is now really just a friend, was protected. So her money that she received from the proceeds of the sale is not protected the same way that her home was protected before she sold it. And now she's accumulated a tremendous amount of medical bills, and she is probably going to have to drain all of her resources to pay those so that she can qualify for government assistance. And she never in her life has had to do that before. So how can you prevent this from happening to someone you care about or someone you're working with? Please make sure that if you encounter any situation like this, that you reach out for support. So where can you reach out for support? So if you're going to be working with older adults, you have older adults in your life, definitely get to know some elder law attorneys, check their reputations, get recommendations for them, and make sure you know when it's time to call them, which is way earlier than this happened, is what I'd like to say about that. You can talk with your local councils on aging. You can just Google that. They're every county, or, it depends on the state where you are, but they're split up by area, by geographic areas. And you can look up your COA, your Council on Aging, because they're a great place to start to understand what kind of resources you might be able to access. You can also make sure that you have access to a good real estate attorney, to a real estate agent who also specializes in working with older adults. There are several certifications and specializations that some real estate agents may have. My preferred one, the one I have, is I'm a certified senior advisor, which means that I've had to go through a rigorous education and testing and certification process, as well as a recertification process every 3 years with extensive continuing education and background checks to make sure that I am up to date and knowledgeable about the wide variety of issues, challenges, and topics that affect us as we age. That certification is not just for real estate agents, it's for any professional that works with older adults. But it's the one that I prefer because I think that it is so deep and wide in the knowledge that it provides to us. But there are other ones out there. There's I'm going to call it a quick certification called a seniors real estate specialist that the National Association of Realtors provides. It is a very high level, like not in depth, broad, just introduction. I'll say this. It's a decent introduction to working with older adults, but in my opinion, it's good to have, but it's just the beginning. And it's not nearly enough to really understand the complexities that we are dealing with as we age and the ways that we need to be aware of supporting our clients. So what may have happened in this situation is that there was a real estate agent who was out of her depth and didn't even know enough to look out for where to bring help in. You know, when I think about it, I get angry because I know there was a real estate attorney involved, and actually it's a respected real estate attorney. And was it his job to ask the question to the client of, hey, have you talked to an estate attorney? Are you, do you know where these assets are going and if they're protected? I guess it's not his job. Do I wish that he had asked those questions before he proceeded with his closing? Because that would have been a better outcome for this woman who's been through so much and was in such a vulnerable position. Yes, of course, I wish that. It makes me a little bit angry that he didn't, but I guess that's not his job. But I do think that it's all of our jobs to look out for our neighbors, our friends, our family members. And as responsible professionals, it's our job to know when we're out of our scope and to bring in help or to refer those clients to people who know better than we do. I can tell you, I have a long list of people I call when I don't know the answer to something or when I'm concerned about something, when a new type of situation pops up. I have many, many professionals in my contacts that I will pick up the phone and call if I see a situation that I have never seen before and that I don't understand. But I guess you also need to know what you don't know. And that may be some education that we need to do better at providing to any kind of professionals that are dealing with people's well-being, assets, homes, money. I could go on and on. I'm on my soapbox a little bit here, but I hope that someone listening to this hears this and realizes, oh, wait, I need to know more to help my clients, to help my mom, to help my neighbor, and at least begins to look out for let's look out for each other. If you have a neighbor or a friend who's telling you they're going to sell your home, ask them the question, have you talked to your kids? If you have a good relationship with your kids, or have you talked to your sister or your brother, your estate attorney? Do you have an estate attorney? Are you protected? Do you know where you're going to live? Sometimes I think we don't want to overstep, but better to overstep a little in service of trying to be of help and protect the people we care about than to let a situation unfold beyond the date that you can go back in time and redo something and protect someone. That was a little bit of a tough episode. I know this is a hard topic. I'll hopefully be back soon with maybe something a little brighter, but I do think this one was necessary, and I hope that it helps someone, if not someone you know. Thanks for being with me. I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for joining me for this week's episode of Home After 50. If this episode resonated, please make sure you're following and subscribing so you never miss a thing. And you can find more resources at my website, julieford.com. See you next time.